Okay, rulers, settle down. Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to get pre-orders of all the upcoming Force of Will sets, as well as releases of previous sets after they come out, as well as fowtcg.com, a wonderful resource for deck lists, article discussions, and more. Check them out at fowtlibrary.com, as well as these amazing patrons. Special thanks to guest lecturer member Vite Ramen. Thank you for your support. Class is in session. Hey there, rulers. Welcome back after a long weekend of Force of Will to Office Hours, your favorite ever live Force of Will podcast featuring myself, DMO73, and tonight I'm just joined by Paul Reisman. Paul Reisman, how are you?
Rooster's coming. He's coming.
He's
almost here.
This isn't an Animal Crossing podcast.
Oh my god, you guys. I'm so excited for this Animal Crossing podcast.
Okay, stop.
Where we talk about how we're getting
Mike's
more
not here today.
haircuts.
Mike's not here today. I don't need this energy from you.
I know, I'm pulling double weight.
So I do just want to say thank you all so much for being here. Super excited to have you all here. If you like what we're doing, if we make you laugh, we make you smile, you like hearing about Force of Will, consider supporting the channel by clicking that join button down below, or by checking the links to go check out our sponsors. You can check out Odyssey Games, who currently has pre-orders of Game of Gods, both boxes, pre-release kits, and each of the starter decks currently available for pre-order, so check those out. And you can also check out fowtlibrary.com for articles and deck lists and all kinds of cool stuff, so check them out. And then, like I said, subscribe, like, leave a comment, feed the algorithm, and consider doing that YouTube membership, which is essentially a Twitch subscription, but it's on YouTube, and that goes to support us, gets us access to new emotes and all kinds of other cool rewards for you as a member. So, we have a lot to talk about tonight. Because the first two story articles related to Dual Cluster, revealing the brand new mechanic, the brand new card type, has gone live. So we're going to break things down. So we're going to go kind of piece by piece and kind of share our thoughts here. So our first card was kind of revealing this idea of order, which is essentially the replacement of judgment. So the way this works is they break it down very, very nicely here by showing us off Nyarlathotep, and we'll get to her order side shortly. But essentially, the way it works is as you're casting a resonator, so this is like while you're putting it on the chase, so you can't like chase someone doing something by changing it to being an order. But like when you're first putting the resonator on the chase, you can choose to order it, and what happens is that immediately says, this card is unchaseable, this card is uncancelable, this card will hit the field, resolve, the Resonator loses its Resonator subtype, gains the J-Ruler subtype, and enters the field. And then your Ruler flips over to its Order side, and the Order side grants it some other abilities, some other words. To kind of break down what we have so far, it says that you lose the Resonator type and you gain the J-Ruler type. Your that new J-Ruler can call stone without having to tap, but can also call stone while tapped. So it can gain both of those things. So you don't lose like tempo there in terms of like while it's active, they want you to still be actively using this Resonator that's now a J-Ruler without having to lose stones. And then it gains some bonus text, which is, for the case of this Nyarlathotep, it gains plus X100, where X is the number of magic stones you control. And then that goes into the you may call a stone while rested, and that kind of thing. So then what happens is if that J-Ruler dies for any reason, your order flips back over to the ruler side, and the Resonator goes to the grave. Simple as that. And you can order again. So, before we go into the next thing, Paul, give me your thoughts on the order mechanic.
I think this is a really interesting way to evolve the judgment mechanic. Because I don't know about the rest of you all out there, but there's a part of me that always wonders, what is the next gimmick, so to speak, and meaning that not pejoratively, right? Not like Yu-Gi-Oh gimmick, like we're gonna make Geminis, that's gonna be cool. I'm talking about like what is the next thing that is like unique to this cluster that is admittedly very interesting in the way they do everything, right? This past cluster we had tag and the reintroduction of like really powerful singleton rulers, and now we're getting essentially no J rulers and all the J rulers. This is a really interesting evolution of what this really basic mechanic has been since the game was just first conceived. And the idea that I mean, we're not even going to talk about Wanderer and how like this is going to be amazing in Wanderer, but we're going to talk about just in New Frontiers how pretty much your whole deck can be your J ruler now, which means that there's going to be more interaction between the field. Not so much it's going to be like I flip my ruler and I just win, right? It's going to be very different in the way that we play games, and I don't know. I'm going to be in this headspace for a long time.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing to me that's very awesome is Force of Will. I would say probably Rhea cluster into now. Force of Will kind of had this joke of like, there's no reason to play a Resonator that costs more than 3 because it's just going to get canceled by something that costs way less. And the fact that like implications not only for New Frontiers but also for Wanderer is like if you're playing one of these rulers, you will get to resolve that Resonator. And I think the other thing that's important to note here is it says just when you're playing a Resonator, right? So any Resonator can be ordered as it's played. That means if you had like a Sigurd in the graveyard, that could be ordered. Like this is post rotation, but like still, and Sigurd's banned in Wanderer, but still, context. So, but like, if you were, or if you were like playing a Resonator from the RFG, like this one they point out here, being Fallen Angel of the Chasm, order says that Resonator will hit field. So, like, if you have an Exorcist Mage on field, and I order something that I'm casting from the RFG, I get to get around your Exorcist Mage. Not only can you not cancel it, but this thing is going to hit the field. So this this provides some very interesting mechanical design space in terms of interaction and play space, where you can kind of like force through little stumbling blocks that your opponent puts up for you, and also just like take some power away from cancels in certain matchups that like could have a pretty big implication on the meta. Like if there's a chance that you sit down across from an order player and you've got cancels in your deck, you're gonna be like, well, crap, a bunch of my dead cards, a bunch of my cards in my deck are dead because they'll just like slow grind me out with orders. So then do we see people playing actively less cancels to then be better prepared to deal with orders? And what does that mean to the meta? Like it's as I think about it, mechanically, it feels like the same kind of meta implication that came with Garion when Garion was spoiled, right? In terms of
let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, go for it.
So what we're seeing with Garion as the primary example, right? The primary comparing component here. Garion has not eliminated or steered away 1-drops nearly as much as I thought he was going to.
Sure.
He certainly has done that. He's given us answers to those. But 1-drops are still quite potent and quite powerful. They're just not like, you can't just reign, right, as a 1-drop. You can't just be like, I'm going to get around everything. Like 2-drops and 3-drops are more valuable now than they have been in the past because 1-drops were curtailed a little bit. I still think we're going to see a lot of cancels being used.
Yeah.
Not against Resonators necessarily, probably against like other cancels and other things that are not Resonators that could be ordered.
Yeah, for sure.
So in that way, I think they're going to still be like much more valuable. Yo-Yo Y in the comments is saying removal over cancels. Maybe. I still think removal is going to be really important just as much as cancels are going to be important. But the fact that your removal if it can kill a J ruler, it's going to be suddenly a lot better.
Yeah, for sure.
I will say that.
For sure. Because Resonator
and Black
removal,
Moon Ray is rotating.
Unfortunate. Resonator removal won't kill them because they're no longer Resonators. It has to be J/Res or just J ruler. Yeah, Toby puts it pretty interesting. It's just like turning instead of having a Resonator that lets our J ruler be something different, like Perfect Loki, our J ruler side is now Perfect Loki. In that kind of sense, like we're transforming a Resonator as opposed to the Resonator transforming our J ruler, which is very cool, like inverting of that mechanic, and like just a very cool design space and a very cool exploration space. I do like the fact that the buff from at least the two that we've seen so far is not just like far and away like flip this win, which I like, because it's supposed to be repeatable, because it's not, if you kill it, it's not astral, so you can just order again. You can order once per turn. And so I like that it's this like little like slight bonus. It's not really about what the J ruler's bringing necessarily as the stat bonus. It just has something there to kind of add it up. And I will point out, so I will point out that in these articles they show us, at least in this first article, they show us, we'll talk about it in a minute, one of the cards that they say is just in the starter deck. But the articles that we've seen from overseas say that the starter decks have 2.5 cards per starter that's not in the set. So it leaves me wondering if the Gnarly that's in the set is gonna be a different order. Because that would be a half a card. Right? That's like the only thing I can think of. Which would be neat. Like, that'd be pretty cool if like the Gnarly in the set is doing something different than the Gnarly in the starter, because there's a way to make it feel, not feel as bad to pull a Gnarly in the set, right? So that'll be
then there's like some head games you can have with people, like
the
old kind of Nyarlathotep.
Yeah, the old like, which Alice am I playing?
Which Alice am I playing?
Whoa,
Ooh,
which
is it
Gnarly
the
am I
bad one or the bad one? Your choice.
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting.
Which of the Memorias am I playing? All 5 are terrible.
Hey, no, I mean, if you show me a Memoria, you're playing Arla Stone combo. It's okay.
You're playing Arlo.
So I do want to say this is just really cool here. The order looks so clean. Like the frame.
This is a really cool design.
Like the frame is completely gone. The new little bottom little accent piece there looks really, really, really nice. Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, it's very different looking, and the fact that it just shows off the art, so many people have told me like they got into this game because of the art, and I'm like, well, here you go.
There you go.
Here's your art, man.
There you go.
And it's interesting in this how like the subtlety of the art, and I'm just gonna nerd out. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're
the subtlety of the art here is like I'm like Nyarlathotep is clearly like, oh, I'm commanding things from my hand, and then she flips and she's like, okay, I'm gonna just take a step back, let you handle this.
Yeah, there's a little bit of like sass to it. I like it.
And then Odin's just angry.
Odin's an angry boy. We'll talk about Odin in a minute. So we did see the first card. Oh, because it was introduced that we saw tails, right? Tails and villains. So one of the other things that's interesting here that I like a lot is the fact that Nyarlathotep is a tails and says you cannot have cards with villain in your deck or Magic Stone deck. So very much like the Book of Light, Book of Dark kind of thing, which I was fine with. I thought that was a cool design space to go into, and it makes it.
A Magic Stone deck is new.
Yeah, that's right?
So
new.
we're gonna have tails stones. What? Bizarre.
Yeah. We are gonna talk why we are gonna talk about Odin that we've seen. We'll get to that here in just a second, because it brings up the next the third mechanic that we're gonna talk about. So next we saw our hero here. This is Lovecraft the Dragon, and we're not gonna talk. We'll talk about his abilities himself, but I want to talk about mechanically. So first off, he is a tails, and they told us that there is this nice little indicator behind the text of the card, a nice little stamping that is represents a tails or a villain, and they show it more in the second article, but like I'm super for that. It looks super crisp on this, and I really can't wait to see what a full art of this looks like and how much that symbol's gonna pop like on a full art. Like, that's gonna look so good. I'm so excited for that. But anyway, let's talk about it.
Oh my gosh.
There's this new a new ability called Revolution, which is any resonator can be ordered. The power of order really shines through when you order a resonator with Revolution. So when you do Revolution, that resonator, on top of getting the bonus from the order, gains all of the text below Revolution. So you're like they're maximizing the channeling of the god's power and really kind of shining strong. I like that as a mechanic a lot. It provides like that extra oomph. It makes cards feel really impactful when you play them, especially since you're going to be playing them and make sure they don't get canceled. Like it's really cool. Really, really cool.
Yeah, I think what this does though, from like the standpoint of the company, they're basically saying, okay, all of the best enter effects from Saga Cluster are going to be the cards you want to order. But you should look at these other newer cards because they might be kind of meh until you order them.
Yeah.
And they're going to get even better.
Yeah.
So like there's definitely, we're going to see like more interesting effects that occur in these newer cards. That, and again, this just benefits enter effects because you can't cancel these things. They're gonna hit field. They're gonna do stuff.
Yeah, I think the thing.
So enter effects just get stronger.
I think the thing with Revolution that I'm most looking forward to is seeing how Revolution cards can be applied outside of Orders decks. Like that to me is going to be an interesting design space because that's like a set being backwards compatible out of cluster, right? Is saying like, hey, I have this card, and like by itself, if you don't revolutionize it, it's still worth playing outside of Order Rulers, but it's not so good outside of Order Rulers that it's going to dissuade you from trying them in an Orders deck. And that's what you kind of want to do in this like set one. And I think this is something that Force of Will can kind of learn as we hit rotation from the implementation of Alice Origins rotating out Rhea Cluster while still keeping New Valhalla. The lesson that we can learn there is that not enough of the cards were they were not only not enough enticement to have me play them over New Valhalla stuff, but they also weren't applicable enough to like want me to play them directly, right? Outside of just like wanting to try out new mechanics. And like Saga Cluster kind of hit that pretty well. I think Saga 1 hit it of like, we have cards that you're gonna want to try to use them in Alice Origins decks, but you're also gonna want to try to use them in Saga. I think a little bit of the mistake there was the presence of Dual Stones, which then kind of really heavily lifted up Alice Origins decks there, so that kind of got stunted. But now we're losing Dual Stones, right? So now we have this opportunity to say, okay, I want these cards to be usable in Dual Cluster and like encourage me to explore Dual Cluster, but also not worthless outside of Dual Cluster for Saga Cluster people, right? And so that's what I'm really looking forward to seeing what that does. And we got our first one.
So, yeah. So what and just keep in mind for anyone out there who doesn't understand the pattern of Force of Will sets, set 1 is a really good intro set. So it introduces the new mechanic. It's got some powerful stuff. It'll shift the meta. Some older stuff from Saga is going to stay in rotation, and it's going to be still really potent because it has its full support. But then sets 2 and 3 are going to really ramp up the power, and then set 4 will just be that nice gravy on top. So if you're not impressed so far, just hang on to sets 2 and 3. You're gonna like what you find.
Well, let's talk real quick about Lovecraft, right? So Lovecraft is a good indication of kind of what we expect to see. This is a 4-cost resonator, right? Okay, great. I'm in it. I don't worry about. I don't say this card's unplayable because it's a 4-cost. I go, it's a 4-cost. I can play this and order it and make it resolve. 18-4.
Your evaluation just changes now.
Yeah, because they can be safe.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so at 18-4, that says banish a magic stone, destroy the J/resonator blocking this card. And then if you revolutionize it, it deals damage equal to its attack to target player or resonator, or J/resonator. And remember, this is uncancelable, so you are now going to be taking potentially 18. And then at the end of the turn, you destroy it. So think about the fact with this new Nyarlathotep, right? So this is a 4-drop. So we're probably going to have at least
Mhm.
4 stones, right, when we cast this, if we're tapping out. So with the revolutionized Yarlathotep, that thing's a 26. That it's got a 2600 attack, and it's got 12 defense. So, yeah. Or drop take 26, please.
Seems okay.
Seems pretty good. So, but then there is that natural caveat to it, right? Of like, it's going to have to die. So I like that feels really cool design space wise, that it feels like checked and balanced, and also sets you up to be able to revolutionize later, which I think is very cool. I'm excited. Starter decks are going to be fun. I'm here for it.
Fushi support.
It's a dragon. It's a dragon.
It's Fushi support.
Hey.
And then, I mean, if it sticks around too, I mean, like if you ever like throw this thing out there, I mean, this thing can like threaten the Belial, right? It's like, I will kill you now.
Oh, that's true. You're
so
not wrong.
It's value. I mean, that alone makes it like a 6 out of 10 for me. Wouldn't it be 22? Yeah, it would be 22.
Oh, I can math. It's not 200 per stone. I'm making it even better. It's 1 per stone.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Institute.
And then, I mean, yeah. He is thinking of Institute, which unfortunately we still have. But yeah, this card is an excellent idea for just promoting the mechanic.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to move on to the next one.
Yeah, we will. I do want to talk real quick before we get started.
This is fantastic.
Before we move into the next comment is Paul is right, and they are 3-color rulers. Look at you go. With the rotation of Ataractius Memoria and Dual Stones, the really only implication that Paul and I, we were talking about this earlier, Paul, the really only implication for these being tricolor, at least for now, is the fact that we have a tricolor Energize, which in an era with no Dual Stones, that actually seems pretty big. Like having
I mean, we have 5 multicolor stones and then a 3-color Energize, which means that we're going to be able to deck create in so many different varieties.
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting.
Great.
Yeah. So let's talk about Force Command and Force Resonance while we talk about Odin. So first off, Odin has the exact same. It does seem like the similarities for them are that, for the judgment or the ordering, being able to call stone while tapped and recovered, like that seems to be kind of stagnant throughout. Odin on this side does say that the thing gets +2/+2 and Pierce. Pierce on command seems like real good. like real good. Yeah, Pierce is a thing. It's always like had times where Pierce is one of those things where like if it's not great, it's real bad, but if Pierce is even a little bit good, it's real good. And so now we just have a ruler that you could just have Pierce on everything. So like
yeah, we've seen the slow creeping back of Pierce as a mechanic, as a keyword.
I'm for it.
We first saw it come back with the Melgus edition, right? Back in Alice Origins.
The Road to the Fire King. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Trying to see if there's anything
+200 in Pierce. That's solid.
Yeah. So he is a villain. I do want to point out here real quick, if you look at the Order of War image and the Order of the game image, the crests actually do look slightly different between a villain order and a hero order, which is a nice little subtle touch.
Oh, that's true.
It's really tiny, it's really subtle, but I'm here for it. Every little subtle aesthetic change.
Oh, I didn't even see that.
I'm like, yes, Ooh. That's really nice. So let's talk about Force Command. If you're looking at Force Command, the really easy way to kind of define it is essentially if your ruler is X, this card gains this text. It is just keywording that mechanic, which, to be honest, we have actually talked on the podcast about wanting to see those kinds of cards come back into the design space. So bringing it back as a keyword type mechanic I'm here for it. I'm really like, let's bring it back.
It's also rendered in just such a way that it makes me wonder. Okay, so I don't know, I don't remember how many rulers we're getting per cluster set, but
Yeah.
was it 3
We have 4
per booster? We have 4 per booster. We have 4 sets. Okay, we are going to quickly outpace the high gods that are in New Valhalla if we just do 4 per set.
Sure.
So part of me wonders, is this then a way of them like assigning multiple force commands to rulers that aren't the high gods?
Oh,
Are we going to have additional rulers?
that'd be interesting.
Like, are rulers going to die in the story, and then we get different ones with different... So, like, if Kaguya dies, right, do we then get her stuff on another ruler who takes over for her, like another high god?
Like a potential we could assume her force command is Moon, because we've seen Force Resonance Moon. So we can kind of make
that's
that
my assumption too.
So
like, can we get something with Moon and Faith or something?
Whoa,
Or Moon and Chaos?
What? Double force
that
commands?
Just breaks open the design space even more, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. So that's crazy to think about the implications. But I really like this idea of it's one of the things that's been sorely missing from Force of Will's like design space for a while, has been these, if ruler is X, do this too. Because the thing about that is those kinds of cards throughout Faust's history, there have been those kinds of cards that have been good enough to play by themselves, but then feel really good to play within your own resonator, right? Within your own ruler. And it encourages ruler choice diversity. It encourages creative deck building, but it doesn't feel so pigeonholed that like you can really only use this card if you're playing with this ruler, which is great. I think that's really fun for the
it's a signpost for new players too.
Yes.
Right. Like, all card games are going into this like archetypal design where it's like, oh look, all of these cards kind of go together because they have similar text or similar effects or do similar things if there's a ruler on the field with said thing. It just helps new players get the hang of the deck.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So I really just appreciate this all around.
Yeah, I'm pumped. I'm pumped, excited for it. As we move on from the ruler, I do want to say I'm very curious to see what happens to our draft ruler. Because you would think that we're probably seeing a new order version of a draft ruler to make this set shine, which, if so, pre-releases are going to be bonkers, and I'm very excited to play in that design space. Like, sure, we won't get Force Command, and then I'm fine with that, but we'll have cards that have Revolution, and that'll also be very fun, and I'm very excited. Just an idea to put out into the universe. So let's talk about that first one here. We have Repeating Faith Revival. So it is a 3 cost, which I don't shirk at, particularly because of its Force Resonance text here. It says, put target light resonator or light alternative card from your graveyard into the field. You may only put a resonator part of that alternative card into the field. Force Resonance Faith, so if you're playing it with Odin. Not only is it unchaseable, it's repeatable. So you just like pay it for 3, it instantly resolves, and then Repeating Faith Revival comes back to your hand. So you have this white, uncancelable, unmourning angelable, unexorcist mageable in response to it. Revival spell, which is really dang cool. Like, that's just cool. Design space. I like that a lot.
Oh yeah.
I think it's going to be fun.
I'm immediately looking for light alternative cards. Like, what would those be? Let's see. Besides flute.
Well, it doesn't have any cost. It's just any light. That's the other thing that's crazy about this card, is it just says light resonator. It doesn't say it doesn't
anything you want.
Just like, what's
basically Almirius, right?
Yeah. Well, she can grab additions.
Well, it's any light card, right?
Yeah.
But it's a revival card. Just bring it back to your hand, right?
It just brings it to the field.
Just straight field. Just recursion in white. Seems good to me.
Yeah, like let's make something crazy. Let's send find a way to send a big boy to the grave and then reanimate it uncancelable with this and have a good time. Like, yep, I'm for it. That's super fun. And then we did get the explosion of Tales and Villains. Like we said, it's essentially Will of Hope, Will of Despair. that does mean that like those texts mean literally nothing to other rulers. Like other rulers can play tails and villains together.
Right.
You could absolutely mix and match. That's totally fine. Which again is that cool space of yes, please. Let's make these cards be usable outside of just the rulers. So you don't have to worry about that. Also, the rules don't apply to the sideboard. So that's interesting to me.
Yeah. I mean, like, let's put cards in my sideboard that I can't use.
Well, see, okay, so hear me out.
Or
let's go speculation
maybe.
time. Let's go speculation time, right? Let's go pure spec, right? We just introduced this idea of cards that have a lot of potential varying text based on what your ruler is. And deck limitations for main deck building, but not sideboard building. This tells me one of two things in my super speculative, let's get crazy brain. One, I'm going to have an absolute hell of a time doing some transformative siding, and you best believe I'm going to do it.
Oh, he will.
I will.
He loves that mechanic.
I love
he loves that
transformative
strat
siding.
so much.
I love it. Second is it makes me wonder if some point in time this cluster we might see a ruler that like can abuse the sideboard to get both somehow, or like wants to find ways to abuse it. Because like over the past 2 years of Force of Will, this idea of revealing cards from sideboard and then using them has become more common. Like every cluster has kind of had at least something that kind of uses the sideboard in this way. And so it makes me wonder if that's going to be what we see from this cluster of like a ruler or an order or something that can, like, hell, even Shakti in New Valhalla did that. You revealed her from the sideboard at the beginning of the game. Or not Shakti, Shiva. At the beginning of the game,
true.
At the beginning of the game, you could reveal Shivas from outside your like. So like, there's a precedent even in New Valhalla era to do that kind of thing. Right?
Okay.
So like,
you're winning me over.
I'm curious. I'm curious. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's gonna happen. This is pure theory craft. As my voice cracks, but like. I'm thinking about it. The lines, they're connecting.
Like dimensional rift, my voice cracks.
Yeah.
You will like this, buddy. There is a very prominent white card in Saga Cluster you can bring back with this.
What is this?
Eldorado.
Okay, don't get me started. That card actually might, like, with repeating Faith Revival.
The cube.
With repeating Faith Revival, don't get me. With repeating Faith Revival, Eldorado might see play. I'm telling you what. If we have a way to send that card is bonkers. That card is insane. If that card resolves the amount of value you generate off of
Eldorado Pearl Shine.
Done. Every time.
Eldorado control Odin. Let's go.
That's the first deck. That's it. We picked it. That's the first deck for the channel. Is Eldorado Odin. That's it. Eldorado. See, you shouldn't have tempted me, man. You shouldn't have tempted me with that. Speaking of very expensive cards in white, we have Gary and Frecky, the Greedy Wolves. This is, I believe, potentially, it does say, maybe this is in the main set. I can't tell. So, 3 white and 2 colorless villain, 13/13. On enter, remove target non-Magic Stone, non-J ruler entity your opponent controls from the game. So just,
okay.
And when it dies, do the same thing. And when it dies, do the same thing.
Sounds like a cube card to me.
Sounds like a card to bring back with repeating Faith Revival to me.
Also that.
Like, dang.
Yeah, this card is actually, and it's a beast, so there's like some support in that.
Yeah.
I don't know how much we have that in Saga Cluster though, but it definitely in Wanderer, like the beast support makes this look interesting.
Oh, I'm very excited to put a bunch of these cards in the queue.
Oh yeah,
So
like all of these cards I'd put in the cube.
So that brings up
Hands up.
that brings up an interesting point for the cube, which is I'll be curious to see people's thoughts, and we'll talk about it. I'll have to talk to Bremen about it. Do we now give you two choices of rulers when you're playing the cube? You could either at the beginning of your game in deck building for the cube choose the judgment ruler or the order ruler.
Yeah, you had to invent that. I hope he's okay with inventing that ruler, right?
Well, unless they make one for us.
That's true.
If they
make one for us, then we don't have to worry about it. But man, cube gets better. Look at Force of Will, cube support.
Even cube gets better. Odin support. Odin enters the game. Oh, that's true. Odin enters the game of gods. Yeah. That spell sets up the Eldoradodin.
Eldorodin.
It's set. I'm building it. First deck, Eldorodin. I'm gonna resolve it, and Paul's gonna cry when I continually resolve Eldorado turn after turn after turn after turn after turn.
Plays Carlina Belial and 10 copies of The Battle Comes to an End just to hit Eldorado. The meme sets up itself.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. The memes. So, and then we do get a nice little closer. We get a nicer closer look here at the two images for tails and villains. I mean, like going back, there's
solid.
There's precedent to what we've seen from these stamps before. We saw they've done stamps behind card text, and they did it. They were a little hard to see because of the bigger. And hear me out. They were a little bit hard to see back in the day on the secret rares, because of the size of the text, like the font size being what it was back in that era.
Okay.
So now we're suddenly going to I know people think that the text size needs to be bigger. I don't disagree. I feel like it could be 1 to 2 font points bigger, but probably gonna be easier to see these images now.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see them full art. I just can't wait to see what these look like full art and how the stampings pop in the full arts. That's the biggest thing that I'm most excited for.
Well, I haven't seen anything like this since this might be dating me, but in Duel Masters itself, there were the survivors, which became there was other stuff in Kaijudo that also did the same mechanic, but they all worked together. But behind those card texts, you had indicators like these icons to show that, this card goes in this kind of deck. This is so cool. The fact that they can fit this in, I think this is a really cool design.
And even on
for the new cards.
Go to our Kaijudo days, the KMC promos and Ruler League, competitive league promos that had the little stamp behind the text boxes.
Oh yeah, so
we're coming
Kaijudo hand.
Yeah, we're coming from a card game. We're coming from a card game where we've seen that done before, and it looks sick. It's if executed well, it looks sick. So I'm very excited to see it done here.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then we also talk about rotation. We're about to lose a bunch of cards. So we're losing all of Alice Origins.
That's a lot of packs.
Alice in 1, and the starter decks 2 and the starter decks 3, Ghost in the Shell and the starter decks, and Prologue are all gone. And we're gonna jump into Saga Cluster.
Just Saga
Cluster and
very
Dual
very
Cluster.
Neat list.
And Dual Cluster. Saga Cluster in this first set, Game of Gods. I'm excited.
Saga Duel.
I've been talking with players from Europe who have been I've been talking with players from Europe who, because of where they are, their competitive season seems like it's ended, at least for now. So they've already started pivoting towards looking at heavily Wanderer, but also heavily Cluster. And we're seeing some pretty cool things. From what we've been told, Saga 1 rulers have the loss of dual stones has done a couple of things. Saga 1 rulers have gotten some oomph to them. And that comes from the fact that the tags have lost their insanely consistent will stone base outside of Six Sages stone, which means they can't get it, which means their main decks can't get as greedy And so you have these rulers where your deck construction is so wide open to make up for the fact that you have 2 tags, and then you try to put that up against rulers who were designed to function off of 1 to maybe 2 colors insanely consistently, and you put them in an environment where the greedy decks can't be so greedy because of their stone base, and turns out you get some fight. There's some fighting there. And there's still a lot of really good Alice Origins cards being used now that just aren't there anymore. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like, both at the casual and the competitive level. And from what I've been hearing as I've been talking with players is we're in for a good time. So
yeah, I mean, I've said this once, like back in Rhea Cluster when I was just looking at the cluster tournaments and reporting on those. I still maintain that when you look at cluster as a whole, that is going to be the determining metagame as you go into dual cluster or into the next cluster in general.
Right.
So whatever dual comes to the table with, right, your 4 rulers that we're getting, whatever they've got going on, they have to compete with this bar. And if you can clear this bar, you're a contender, or even meet this bar. So do that. Look at the cluster tournaments and just get a sense of like what works. Make sure that they're not like doing alternative rules like band feasting or something crazy like that. And you should be able to get your head around what the metagame looks like.
That's Wanderer. Wanderer has feasting band.
Dan, there have been some Europeans that have like just banned feasting from their tournament, and even if it's cluster or new.
I think it was Belial, feasting, and 6-8 Stone all got banned. I disagree with that list.
Yeah,
I think feasting is probably fine. I think 6-8 Stone is a little preemptive, and I also think that banning Belial is a mistake. But I've gone into that discussion before. I'm more than willing to have that conversation with anyone. I don't think there's enough data to. I think there's a lot of data to tell you that you shouldn't ban Belial, because he's kind of a necessary. He's kind of a necessary evil in the meta for some of the decks that exist in this meta. But we'll talk about it. Necessary evil. But yeah, I like that. David Hansen, Fallen Angels will be fine if they run Dante and Virgil. You're right. Dante Virgil is still very good. But you have to understand that with the lack of dual stones, and you have these decks that are very, very consistent. Like there are actually pretty good answers to Virgil that exist in pretty much every color. In Saga Cluster. So
Parasol for blue,
Hunting Angel for white. Wind doesn't really have much. Necessarily.
That's one I was struggling on.
Wind
cancel
in terms of like super early answers, right? Wind doesn't have the most, but that's one of the things that I have been noticing, which has been nice. So we've been playing at our locals, and our locals has more or less shifted towards the cluster environment. We're still playing dual stones for right now, but like we're playing around with it to kind of get used to it. And like wind decks, like base wind decks from what we've seen, really do struggle with go wide. Like go wide aggro, good against those, right? But like you'd expect that. You want that.
Yeah.
So
Spark of Life.
They will have 8 5-color stones. They'll have they have 6-8 stone, which is a 40% chance to hit on one, right? If you want to play Dante, I guess you're saying for like playing the Satan Stone.
Yeah.
I don't super like that stone, but they can rely on it, right? But then you have to think about what you're missing by effectively turning half of your tag into I'm doing this for my stone base. Like that feels kind of weird. But maybe that's enough, right?
Yeah.
It's something we'll have to see. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that I think that there's the reports that we're getting from people who are exploring that format is that there, as much as there is cool experimentation now in dual stone format, there is even more possibilities opened up by the lack of dual stones in Saga Cluster, which is very exciting.
Which is what I love.
Oh,
that's
yes.
great. Oh, also Windstone Shot in Six Sages as well as Welser. So
Oh,
there's
that's true.
answers, but they're not like traditional removal answers.
They're green answers. They're like green answers.
Pharesia can be a card.
Ugh, I love
But
Pharesia
again,
so
turn
much.
2. I
Yeah.
know he loves Pharesia.
That card has been so good. She was good as a black-green vampire. She's good as a green human. Like, let's go.
I mean, like, as you go into cluster format brain mode, right? I mean, the fact that Dante can just turn on your Satan stones very consistently and you automatically have those 8-color stones might say that whatever deck Dante is in might be valuable, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if it's Belial or Carlina variations or even Astema variations, those might be a place for you to start, right? But even so, like, Six Sages are still really good. Like, I just don't think we've cracked them quite yet in terms of the new meta.
I'll also say, I'll also point to the fact of, like, if we're talking about good color consistency, we have other rulers that can get very comfortable with color consistency, being things like Olivia can get very color consistent. You can have Violet, who doesn't care, who doesn't really care about her stones at all. You have Wolfgang, who doesn't care about his stones nearly as much. You have Shayla or Celesta, who really doesn't care about her stones nearly as much. You get Oberazuki, who has been given so many white tech cards, it's not even funny.
And the Amadeus Stone.
And you get Oberazuki's just like, straight four Amadeus Stones. Like, let's go. There's because I'm already base white, so like, who cares? So it's gonna be very interesting to see what happens. I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to a full year of no duels, and like, I could be totally fine if duels never come back. Because I'll just play it in Wander.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll just play them in Wander.
A break is fine.
I mean,
they're always going to exist in Wander. The Wander format's going to always have that consistent question. Like, how long do we keep the dual stones in rotation, right? Maybe we could do like 1 or 2 years of just no dual stones, and that'd be fine.
Yeah, I'll be down for that for sure. I'm very excited
because I was going to say because it's pushing you into special Magic Stone construction that gets you additional colors, but you have to work for it, right? Yeah. And that's what I find really interesting.
I also really like that with the rotation of duels, there's a kind of natural enticement to go explore Wanderer. With duels not being part of New Frontiers, it's like, you're exploring New Frontiers and you're having a good time here. If you want a little bit more freedom and not having to work so hard for your color base, go and explore in Wanderer. Like, there's a natural encouragement that comes from that, which is really, really cool. I will say I have been exploring Wanderer more. I blame Mike Rance for the co-creation of Carlina Hungry Box. That deck is an absolute blast to play, and it actually has me being like, who wants to play Wanderer, please? Who wants to play Wanderer, please? So I'm excited to see what that brings to the table too, and like other kinds of things. I'm excited all around. I think I'm starting to see myself. I'm starting to be. How do I want to say this? I'm getting to the point where I might need to pick a different container to bring my cards to locals with, because I might be keeping more decks sleeved at a time. Which is, I'm down for that. I'm okay with that. Let's keep a Wanderer deck. Let's keep a New Frontiers deck. Let's keep some alternate souls. Let's keep some Genesis format. Like, I'm down for it. I like Genesis. You built one deck.
I know you do.
You built one deck and played it one time, and we built it in an hour, and it didn't go great for you.
And it was just like, but all my brain power is going toward remembering what is in my deck.
Yeah. 60 card singleton with the entire card pool.
Like, I need coffee now. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
If you genuinely enjoy Genesis, folks out there, like that's fine. It's just it's not my flavor.
Singleton formats are not Paul's cup of tea at all.
I don't like playing 1.5 Ragnarok decks.
Yeah. Yeah, not his cup of tea. Speaking of Wanderer, we are going to have a feature match for you guys. Should be either next week or the week after, based on how the recordings go. Of Carlina
soon.
Carlina Hungry Box. versus Almerius Moodstart Zalus Palace, which is gonna be fun. Two very well. Carlina Hungrybox is our newest kind of creation, but Zalus Palace is a fan favorite in the Wanderer era, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. This week's feature match is going to be not a feature match, but another tutoring session. Diva Dan, our channel member, was able to get scheduled with me for his bi-monthly game, and we did red white black Wolfgang utility versus Belial Beatrice tag. And as I remember that our tutoring sessions, it's a full match, but we are actively discussing the match between the two of us and talking play lines and decision trees. Like, it's a very in-depth kind of discussion to kind of break down the matchup, break down the card choices, break down the decks. So be sure to check that out on Wednesday. It's going to be great. It was super fun to do with Dan. If this is something that you would want to participate in, or even if this is something that you would want to have with us outside of recording, you're more than welcome to. You can join the channel at the membership. I believe it's support staff. And if you do that, then you get to have games with us at least every couple of months. Where we can do that kind of really in-depth breakdown with you and kind of talk through things and do some coaching. So consider checking that out. Best format to walk into, no duels. Yeah. So as we close out here, Paul, kind of any closing thoughts as we close out this first look? And we should be able to be back next week's office hours with the wonderful first set of spoilers, which will be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the only last minute thoughts I have are, I always genuinely, it's just enforceable in general in games with rotation in general. I always love being able to look back at the cards from the previous cluster with a new set of eyes.
Yeah.
And just looking at those decks and saying like, what do I want to try now? Now that I have these limitations, and as anyone in a creative field will know, I was a creative writing major. When you have limitations, it breeds creativity. So like creative deck building for me is always exciting at the beginning of a format, and then we're walking in with a format with no duels. So I'm like even more restricted. Like what text do I want to put in certain decks?
Yeah.
That's all I got.
I'm looking forward to the challenge. I'm looking forward to the creativity. And I'm looking forward to seeing what's in these sets. Let's get after it.
I want spoilers.
Yeah,
give me.
Me too. I do want to say again, if you haven't already, go ahead and click that sign up down below to be part of the last GP of this season here in the United States, the Games and Geek Discord GP. You can check the link in the description to go get signed up for that. It is this Saturday, and Top Cut is on Sunday. I will be streaming it. I will be solo streaming.
Yeah.
No one can hang out with me, so you get to have me commentating over the day for a while. I'm looking into some stuff to do for fun between matches. I think I might have just an open invitation to anyone to try to beat Hungrybox in Wanderer and do that live. And if you can, you get a prize. That's something that I've considered, where like if you can beat it in a game live in between matches, I'll send you a GP promo. Think that could be cool. So we'll give it a shot. Just some stuff to keep it entertaining. But we're looking forward to having that stream this weekend. As a reminder, if you are not a channel member, during GP streams, the chat will be locked to just channel members. Even at the lowest level, you can get in on the chat. The stream itself will be obviously completely free and available to everyone, but the chat is locked. So if you want to be able to chat with us during the GP stream this weekend, consider clicking that join button. But other than that, it's been wonderful talking with you all in the chat. It's been wonderful chatting with you, Paul, about this new stuff and getting excited. And this has been myself, as always, Demo73 and Paul. And hopefully next week we'll have Mike back. But until next time, this is us saying class dismissed.
Class is in session.
Have a good night, everybody.